Yes, Bante, you are online. We just wait 5 minutes. पुलिस माझी सर जुड़े हैं क्या? सो हम हमारे प्रधानाचार्य की अनुमति से कार्यक्रम आरंभ करते हैं। सर आपको वो बंद करना पड़ेगा, आवाज हाँ सभी को डाउन करनी पड़ेगी। नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्दस्सा। नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्दस्सा। नमो तस्सा भगवतो अरहतो सम्मा संबुद्दस्सा। बुद्ध और कार्ल मार्क्स दो ऐसे व्यक्तित्व हैं जिन दोनों के बीच में लगभग 2381 वर्षों का गैप है। जहां भगवान बुद्ध का जन्म 563 ईसा पूर्व में हुआ, वहीं कार्ल मार्क्स का जन्म 1818 ईस्वी में हुआ। और बाबा साहब का जो वक्तव्य था, उस वक्तव्य के आधार पर ही जो बाद में बुक फॉर्मेट में हमें उपलब्ध होता है बुद्ध और कार्ल मार्क्स के रूप में, तो उन्होंने बुद्ध के सिद्धांतों को 25 बिंदुओं में समेकित किया है और मार्क्स की अवधारणा को अंकित किया है, और दोनों की तुलना उन्होंने साध्य और साधनों के आधार पर उस पुस्तक में की है। तो सार रूप में जो बाबा साहब उसका जो कंक्लूजन देते हैं, लास्ट लाइन जो बोलते हैं कि भ्रातृत्व या स्वतंत्रता के बिना समानता का कोई मूल्य व महत्व नहीं। ऐसा प्रतीत होता है कि ये तीनों विद्यमान रह सकती हैं जब व्यक्ति बुद्ध के मार्ग का अनुसरण करे। साम्यवादी इन तीनों में से किसी एक की प्राप्ति करने में सक्षम है। ये बाबा साहब का बुद्ध और कार्ल मार्क्स वाली किताब में उनका कंक्लूजन है। और क्योंकि इसका वक्ता विद्वान हमारे साथ जुड़े हुए हैं और वो विषय के विशेषज्ञ हैं, वो बात रखेंगे। तो बाबा साहब ने 20 नवंबर 1956 को फोर्थ कॉन्फ्रेंस ऑफ द वर्ल्ड फेलोशिप ऑफ बुद्धिस्ट सेमिनार में नेपाल में बुद्ध और कार्ल मार्क्स इस विषय का वक्तव्य दिया, जो बौद्ध व्याख्या पद्धति का आज अनमोल ग्रंथ बन चुका है। और इसका मैं खुद बुद्ध अथवा कार्ल मार्क्स विषय से मैंने संस्कृत अनुवाद किया है। अभी वो प्रकाशनाधीन है, प्रकाशन होके आएगा। इस पूरे ग्रंथ का संस्कृत में अनुवाद मैंने किया है, देखिए में। तो चंद्रधारी मिथिला महाविद्यालय और मारवाड़ी महाविद्यालय दोनों के संयुक्त तत्वावधान में आयोजित इस पैनल डिस्कशन में मैं आप ही का एक बार स्वागत करता हूं, इस्तकबाल करता हूं। और इसका विषय जैसा कि अब आप लोग जान चुके हैं, बहुत ही उत्तम विषय इसका हमने रखा है, बुद्ध और कार्ल मार्क्स। So before starting this panel discussion, I would like to invite Venerable Professor Firapala Sorowat Apipanyo from Mahachulalongkorn University, Thailand, for reciting Buddha Vandana. Venerable Sorawat. Thank you very much to everyone. Now I would like to invite Dr. Sunita Kumari, the head of department Sociology, Marwari College, and the convener of this panel discussion for welcome speech and intro of the program.
हमारे सभी गणमान्य अतिथियों का मैं बहुत बहुत स्वागत करती हूँ। आज जिस टॉपिक पर पैनल डिस्कशन होने जा रहा है वह है बुद्धा और कार्ल मार्क्स। मैं बहुत दिनों से सोच रही थी कि इस टॉपिक पर डिस्कशन होना चाहिए और आज वह समय आ ही गया, क्योंकि यह टॉपिक ही ऐसा है जो कि किसी को सोचने पर मजबूर कर देता है। अगर हम देखें तो बोधिसत्व डॉक्टर अंबेडकर कार्ल मार्क्स को आधुनिक समाजवाद या साम्यवाद का जनक मानते थे। अंबेडकर के अनुसार साम्यवाद को स्थापित करने के दो मार्ग हैं, हिंसा और श्रमिक वर्ग की तानाशाही। यानी कि हिंसा द्वारा विद्यमान ढांचा नष्ट किया जा सकता है तथा श्रमिक वर्ग की तानाशाही द्वारा नया शासन अर्थात साम्यवादी सरकार चलाई जा सकती है। इसके साथ ही बुद्ध हिंसा के विरुद्ध थे, परंतु वे न्याय के पक्ष में भी थे और जहां पर न्याय के लिए बल प्रयोग अपेक्षित होता है वहां उन्होंने बल प्रयोग करने की अनुमति दी है। बुद्ध एक लोकतंत्रवादी के रूप में पैदा हुए थे और लोकतंत्रवादी के रूप में ही मरे। बाबा साहेब अम्बेडकर ने बुद्ध या मार्क्स पुस्तक में कार्ल मार्क्स की विचारधारा की तीखी आलोचना की है और समाज में अस्थायी शांति के लिए बौद्ध धर्म को आवश्यक बताया है। तो आज का पैनल डिस्कशन इसी पर आधारित है, जिससे बहुत सारी महत्वपूर्ण बातें निकलकर सामने आएगी। इसमें शामिल होने वाले विद्वानों का मैं तहे दिल से स्वागत करती हूँ। इस वेबिनार का अध्यक्षता हमारे प्रभारी प्रधानाचार्य महोदय डॉक्टर कन्हैया जी झा सर द्वारा किया जाएगा और सर ने बहुत ही अपना महत्वपूर्ण समय इस कार्य के लिए निकाला, जिसके लिए मैं सर को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद व्यक्त करती हूँ। स्वागत भी करती हूँ सर का इस कार्यक्रम में तहे दिल से। हमारे पैनलिस्ट में मैं स्वागत तथा अभिनंदन करती हूँ आदरणीय डॉक्टर हुलेस मांझी सर का, जो कि असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर एंड डॉक्टर अंबेडकर चेयर पटना यूनिवर्सिटी पटना से हैं। मैं स्वागत करती हूँ आदरणीय मिस्टर अरविंद कुमार जी, जो कि पीएचडी रॉयल हॉलवे यूनिवर्सिटी ऑफ लंदन यूनाइटेड किंगडम से हैं। मैं आपका बहुत-बहुत स्वागत तथा अभिनंदन करती हूँ। इसी क्रम में आगे हैं आदरणीय डॉक्टर दिनेश कुमार अहिरवार जी, जो कि असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ पीस एंड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट स्टडीज सिक्किम सेंट्रल यूनिवर्सिटी सिक्किम से हैं। मैं आपका स्वागत करती हूँ और अभिनंदन करती हूँ। आदरणीय मिस्टर पिंडिगा अंबेडकर, जो कि रिसर्चर ट्राइकॉन्टिनेंटल रिसर्च इंडिया से हैं। मैं आपका स्वागत करती हूँ। और प्रोफेसर प्रहलाद तुरावत अभिपन्यु सर, जो कि महाचुलांगकोर्न राज यूनिवर्सिटी थाईलैंड से हैं, जिन्होंने शुरुआत में ही बुद्ध वंदना करके इस कार्यक्रम को आगे बढ़ाने का कार्य किया। सर, मैं आपका बहुत स्वागत करती हूँ और अभिनंदन करती हूँ। इस कार्यक्रम के सेशन मॉडरेटर हैं डॉक्टर विकास सिंह, हेड डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ संस्कृत मारवाड़ी दरभंगा एलएनएमयू से। मैं आपका स्वागत करती हूँ। सर, जब से मारवाड़ी कॉलेज में आए हैं तब से बहुत सारे कार्यक्रमों को काफी अच्छे ढंग से संचालित करवाते आए हैं तथा कभी न थकते हुए ये भरपूर सहयोग भी देते रहते हैं। वोट ऑफ थैंक्स के लिए आदरणीय डॉक्टर आर एन चौरसिया सर, जो कि हेड ऑफ डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ संस्कृत सीएम कॉलेज दरभंगा एलएनएमयू से हैं, जिनके आशीर्वाद तथा सहयोग के कारण ही हम लोग लगातार सेमिनार तथा वेबिनार का आयोजन करते जा रहे हैं। मैं आपका स्वागत करती हूँ तथा अभिनंदन करती हूँ। रिपोर्टिंग के लिए डॉक्टर सगुप्ता खानम, जो कि असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर एमआरएम कॉलेज एलएनएमयू दरभंगा से है। मैं आपका भी स्वागत करती हूँ मैडम। और अंत में इस कार्यक्रम में उपस्थित सभी लोगों का सम्मिलित रूप से स्वागत तथा अभिनंदन करती हूँ। धन्यवाद।
Thank you, ma'am, for your welcome speech. Now, I would like to invite our Honorable Principal, Dr. Kanhaiya Ji Jha, sir, to inaugurate the panel discussion. Sir.
Respected guests and participants, good afternoon to everybody. It's a matter of great pleasure for me to have been given this opportunity to inaugurate this very significant webinar on the topic Buddha or Karl Marx. I welcome all of you. To name them, Dr. Hules Majhi, Assistant Professor, Dr. Ambedkar Chair, Patna Mr. Arvind Kumar, PhD. Royal Holloway All the panelists, they are all distinguished people in their field, and many of them are from outside country also. So I'm quite sure that out of this webinar, some conclusions, some relevant conclusions will come, which will benefit our society, and if they get published, it will reach out to the larger section of our society for their welfare. Once again, I welcome all of you, and I declare this webinar open.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your motivational and kind words. And now program is already inaugurated by our respected and honorable principal, Dr. Kanhaiyaji Jha. So let's begin our discussion. First of all, I would like to invite Dr. Hulis Maji. Dr. Hulis Maji is an assistant professor in Patna University's Dr. Ambedkar chair. So, sir, the dais is for you. Hulis Maji, sir.
Sir, unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Unmute yourself.
जी. First of all, respected and most honorable distinguished guests and presidents of this program, and our president and panelists, distinguished panelists, and all participants, organizers. So thanks a lot for giving the chance for me. And मैं तो ये कहूँगा कि ज़्यादातर हिंदी में बोल कर आप सबसे मुखातिब होना चाहूँगा कि ये कार्यक्रम के लेकर आप सब जो तैयारी कर रहे हैं, डॉक्टर विकास सर हेड हैं संस्कृत में, और सुनीता जी जो संचालन कर रही हैं सोशियोलॉजी में है शायद, और अभी हम सुन पा रहे थे प्रिंसिपल कन्हैया सर, और वो मारवाड़ी कॉलेज हमारी जानकारी के अनुसार प्रिंसिपल हैं ललित नारायण मिथिला यूनिवर्सिटी दरभंगा। तो ऐसे कई गेस्ट हमारे बीच जुड़े हैं, उन्हें मैं सुनना चाहूँगा, सीखना चाहूँगा, मेरा भी ज्ञानवर्धन होगा। अम्बेडकर फैमिली सर जो एज ए डिस्टिंग्विश यहाँ पैनलिस्ट के तौर पर जुड़े हैं, और अभी जो हम लोग के बीच मॉक बौद्धिस्ट साहब बोल रहे थे, उनका भी ज्ञानवर्धन हम लोगों को। क्या आप लोगों की आवाज मिल पा रही है? ऑल आर यू ऑडिबल टू मी? हेलो,
हाँ मिल पा रही है, बोला जाए। हाँ हाँ मिल पा रही है, बोला जाए।
इन्होंने मैसेज किया कि आपकी आवाज साफ है। तो मैं यही कहूँगा कि जो बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण विषय पर ये ऑनलाइन वर्चुअल सेमिनार बुलाई गई है, और इसके लेकर जो हेलो, बीच में कोई रविंद्र जी बोल रहे हैं, पैनलिस्ट है, आवाज अगर क्लियर है तो मैं ज्यादा समय नहीं लेकर नमो बुद्धाय, जय भीम, आप सभी को जय भीम। मैं ये
सर आवाज आ रही है, आप बोलिए सर, आवाज आ रही है आपकी।
ओके ओके मैम, थैंक यू।
आप कंटिन्यू रहिए सर।
जी जी जी, थैंक यू। तो जिस प्रकार इसमें जुड़े हुए पैनलिस्ट गेस्ट में हमें पता है कि डॉक्टर दिनेश अहिरवार सर, डॉक्टर कन्हैया सर जो है जो प्रेसिडेंट कर रहे हैं, और हम देख रहे हैं कि विकास सर और आप सभी को ये सुनहल विषय जो आपने रखा है कार्ल मार्क्स और बुद्ध, तो ये जो किसी का कॉल आ जाए, सॉरी कि कॉल बीच में आना यही होता है ऑनलाइन का समस्या। तो मैं कह रहा था कि जिस प्रकार जो टॉपिक है हम लोगों के सामने, उससे अगर आज के संदर्भ में हमें देखें या उससे सीखने का, आत्मसात करने का प्रयास करें, तो बहुत ही प्रासंगिक है, बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है। आज जिस प्रकार हम लोग अगर चाहे 463 BC के बुद्ध का संदेशों को लें, उनके जो बुद्ध ने जो हम सबों को दिया बौद्ध विचार को देखें, तो वो बिल्कुल ही अहिंसा से परे और हम सबों के दीर्घ दृष्टि, यानी ये जो सबों का कहे, ये सबकी शांति, सबकी सुकून, सबका सहयोग, चाहे उनकी जितनी भी रचनाएं पढ़ते हैं हम लोग यही पाते हैं कि बुद्ध के जो संदेश है वो हम सभी के, चाहे शिक्षण जगत का हो या शिक्षण जगत से बाहर के साथी हो, तो सबके लिए अनुग्राही है, अनुकरणीय है। और हम कम शब्दों में कहें तो उनके विचार को माने। तो आज देख रहे हैं विश्व जगत में दो देश आपस में लड़ रहे हैं, दो छोटे परिवार आपस में लड़ रहे हैं, इस सब का समाधान हमको लगता है शायद बुद्ध के संदेश में बिल्कुल है। आज जो विश्व जगत पे स्वतंत्रता, समानता और जो बंधुत्व और भाईचारे की नींव बुद्ध ने जिस प्रकार अपने लेखनी में या जिस प्रकार उनके संदेशों में मिलता है, उसे हम सबको यही है। सभी, चाहे वो कोई पार्टिकुलर स्टेट हो, पार्टिकुलर पर्सन हो, या फिर वो सार्वजनिक संस्थान के कोई हेड या मुखिया इंस्टीट्यूशन हेड हो, उन सभी पर लागू होता है। तो इस प्रकार हम यही कहेंगे कि बुद्ध के संदेश भी, और वहीं फिर कार्ल मार्क्स जो दुनिया जगत में 18वीं शताब्दी के उत्तरार्ध जब वो आते हैं, तो उनका जो भी संदेश है वो हम सब के लिए भी उसी तरह का है। उन्होंने समानता की बात को चाहते थे कि भाई जो तमाम महरूम हैं, वंचित हैं, शोषित हैं, मजदूर हैं, किसान हैं, उन्हें भी समाज के मुख्य धारा में लाने हेतु कई आंदोलन, कई संघर्ष और उनकी लेखनी, कार्ल मार्क्स का जो मैथोलॉजी कहिए या उनकी फिलोसफी कहिए या उनका दर्शन कहिए, वो सब आज भी हम सबों के लिए संदेश से भरा हुआ है और अनुकरणीय है, प्रासंगिक है। उसकी महत्ता, उसे अपनाने की जरूरत है। उनके जो नीति सिद्धांत है उस पर समाज को चलकर ही समाज का सर्वोत्तम विकास, संस्थान का सर्वोच्च विकास संभव हो पाएगा। इस मानव जगत के लिए हमको लगता है, और आप इन दोनों को जोड़ दिए हैं, तो आप समझिए कि ये पूरा का पूरा समाज में, जो हम यही कहेंगे कि समाज में समता, स्वतंत्रता, बंधुत्व, भाईचारे का संदेश से ओतप्रोत है और इसकी जरूरत है। अभी जितने सारे संस्थान इस सामरिक विषय की आवश्यकता है कि हमें उसे इंस्टीट्यूशन में और भी उनके ऊपर शोध हो, रिसर्च हो, उनके ऊपर लेखनी हो, उनके ऊपर विचार संगोष्ठी, कार्यशाला, सेमिनार, सिंपोजियम, इन सभी की बिल्कुल वाकई इंस्टीट्यूशन संस्थान में, एजुकेशनल संस्थान में तो और ही इसकी महती आवश्यकता है। इसलिए मैं तो ज़्यादातर सर को भी कहा था, विकास सर, मुझे बहुत सारे बुद्धिजीवियों से, क्योंकि हम लोग बिल्कुल विषय से इतर रहा, डॉक्टर अम्बेडकर चेयर में जब जुड़ा तो अम्बेडकर और बुद्ध के पढ़ने का मौका मिला है। कई वैल्यूम हम लोग उनका, लगभग 40 वैल्यूम अभी भारत गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया और सोशल जस्टिस एम्पावरमेंट ऑफ ये छपवाई है, उसको हम लोग पढ़ रहे हैं। और उन्होंने तो उस एक वैल्यूम में जिक्र भी किया है कार्ल मार्क्स और बॉल, क्योंकि एक वैल्यूम पूरा उसी पर आधारित है। तो हम लोग की बातचीत हो रही थी, तो मुझे भी अभी जानने की और भी बुद्धिजीवियों से, पैनलिस्टों से ज्ञानवर्धन करने के लिए ही मैं इच्छा जाहिर किया था। तो इसी के साथ मैं चाहता हूँ कि आप सबको वंदन, चंदन, अभिनंदन, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, आभार कि आप सबों ने हमने जो वक्त दिया और जो सुना शांतिपूर्ण, इसके लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। थैंक्स अ लॉट ऑल ऑफ दिस। और आगे के लिए मैं चाहता हूँ,
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और आप पटना के अंतर्गत एक बहुत ही सामाजिक रूप से सक्रिय अम्बेडकराइट स्कॉलर के रूप में, एक प्रसिद्ध विद्वान व्यक्तित्व के रूप में जाने जाते हैं, और हम सब लोगों के बीच में एक अभिभावक का काम करते हैं हमारे बीच में सर। तो सर आपको बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद समय देने के लिए। सो नाउ आई वुड लाइक टू इनवाइट मिस्टर पिंडिगा अम्बेडकर, who is the researcher of tricontinental research, for discussion। और अम्बेडकर सर के बारे में बताना चाहता हूँ। सर JNU-SU का इलेक्शन लड़े हैं और लेफ्ट पॉलिटिक्स और अम्बेडकराइट पॉलिटिक्स दोनों से सर बारीक से जुड़े हुए हैं और हमारे सीनियर हैं सर। सर से हमने बहुत कुछ सीखा है, तो ऐसे विद्वान वक्ता को हम लोग सुनना चाहेंगे। पिंडिगा अम्बेडकर सर।
Thank you, Vikas. The Department of Sociology, Marwari University, Department of Sanskrit, CM College, Ellen Mithila University. I thank you all for giving me this opportunity to present my views on a very important topic. That's the world views, or whatever the world that can be organized if the thought of Buddha and Karl Marx come together. And I'm grateful to Baba Sahib for having taken that lead in actually writing a comparison and seeing if these two ideas can meet. And most of you, is my pace okay or should I go slow?
Yes, okay, sir.
Okay, so most of you who have attended this text might have already gone through the text and the context which it was written. So I thought, seeing my name in the last in the panel, I thought I'll only give a critical appraisal of the text. But since I am probably the first speaker on the text, I'll just touch upon the basic agreement between Buddha and Karl Marx, and how Dr. Ambedkar saw the differences or how they could come together. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So for both of them, private property led to suffering in the society. And for the communists, abolition of private property is very important to bring about equality. Even for the Buddha, private property brought about a lot of dukkha. So on this way, how both of them tried to reach to a society where there is no private property, I think Dr. Ambedkar talks about the means of both the people. For the Buddha's teachings, ethical way of living is very important to reach about, getting rid of, personally, voluntarily getting rid of private property. But Dr. Ambedkar writes that violence and dictatorship of the proletariat is what the communists see to bring for the abolition of private property. However, we must remember and recognize that socialism is the common ground for both Buddha and Karl Marx. I have to say that. So then when we come to the next evaluation of means, Buddha, we should see that we all just talked about how Vikas in his initial comments said Buddha was not against violence. That is what even I'm trying to say, that if the or for that matter, arguing on behalf of the communists, that if the poor of the society are organized for asking for equality, you know what happens in our society. If they do not defend themselves against the violence that is meted out to them, we can only see umpteen number of atrocities that are committed. We all are aware that even though the Prevention of Atrocities Act, which was passed in 1989, has come into force, we see that every 10 minutes and every 1 hour there is violence on the so-called untouchables of this society. How else are they going to come out? See, all through now, they've been peaceful, they have had the constitutional methods, but they're not able to defend themselves. And I would want to bring to your attention that in the same act, the law provides that for your safety, the people from the scheduled caste community can take licenses from the state, to bear arms. So even the modern democratic society sees the necessity of violence for self-defense. And I'd want to quote Buddha's himself and Dr. Ambedkar quotes in the text. The Buddha was in favor of violence where justice required it to be, where justice, for implementing justice, violence was necessary. So he permitted the use of force. So similarly, I think talking for economic justice, when people are asking for equality, the use of force by the communists is not unjustifiable. Maybe all methods have to be explored, and then as a last resort, violence can be adopted. And I want to bring to your attention that in India itself, there are so many communist parties functioning on democratic principles. They wish to bring about socialism by fighting elections and coming to power. So it's not that the communists are hell bent on only having violence as a mode of capturing state power. So I think Dr. Ambedkar would have appreciated this had he seen that the communists have definitely adopted a path of non-violent and through participation in parliamentary democracy. And I want to also bring to your notice when Dr. Ambedkar talks about Ashoka's example, the greatest king ever to have existed in our subcontinent, Ashoka, gave up violence. But we must remember that when he united the whole of the subcontinent, when he conquered Kalinga, when there was no external threat to the state, that is when violence was given away as a state policy. So we should not forget that. Then whose means are more effective? Yeah. Before that, I would want to talk about little snippets where Dr. Ambedkar talks about democracy existing in the Buddha Sangha. And I would also want to give a similar example of the Communist Party is organized on the similar lines. The Central Committee of any Communist Party is organized where all the members have equal rights. And the Politburo, which is the nominal head of the Central Committee of the party, functions on democratic discussion and debate. There is nobody who can push their views on anybody else, and that the dictatorship of the proletariat doesn't function in the Communist Party's decision making. It's the consensus that they come together on similar ways where the Sangha exists. And Dr. Ambedkar writes that there is no head in the Sangha, and he gives the example of the Tathagata Buddha being the prime minister of the Sangha. So I'm just trying to say that the general secretary of a communist party is a nominal head. So there is no dictatorship of the proletariat when it comes to functioning of the Sangha or the party. But it is a different matter that when you are organizing or running a state, then you would need organs of the state, say for the example, the army, the police, the judiciary. That's a different matter altogether. So I think Dr. Ambedkar did not give sufficient differentiation when he commented on the proletariat, dictatorship of the proletariat in one instance and the Sangha in the different instances. So had he talked about how the state existed under the rule of, under the rule of a Sangha, I'm sure he would have talked about the necessity of state organs for maintaining peace. Yeah. Then, if you look at, for that matter, Dr. Ambedkar extensively talked about Soviet Russia. The revolution came about, people's revolution came about in 1917. And after that, twice they formed a constitution. But in 1935, they formulated a modern constitution for the Soviet Union. And if you see that constitution, it is very much in sync with what Dr. Ambedkar envisaged for the people's rights. Though Vikas talked about liberty, equality, and fraternity, which I'll come to the later part of my presentation, I just want to say that if you look at the Constitution of Russia in 1935, there you see that initially the landlords and all whose property had been taken away, they did not have equal rights. But in the 1935 Act, if you see, they have been given equal rights because by then they have been able to declass the society and bring about everybody on equal path of having common ownership. So I think it's a journey that brings about abolishing of private property is a journey. If you see, the end result would be obviously that everybody would be equal, and is the state that would have the power to enforce rights on the citizens. Yeah. Then whose means are more effective? Government by force or government by moral disposition? This I totally agree to what Dr. Ambedkar says, that a society organized on ethics, basically how, if you want to, I mean, if I put it differently, or if I want to use the constitutional term, duties of a citizen. If we employ these duties of a citizen, I think that uh, Dr. Ambedkar says the Buddha's method of having certain rules and regulations for the individual are more effective in sustaining revolution, or for that matter, sustaining the Sangha. I would want to give, I mean, we all are aware that Buddhism was quite the biggest social order in the subcontinent, but it got attacked from the Sanatani forces or the external forces, which did not believe in the equality as a principle of, or that there is no God. There is only, we human beings are guided by nature, and it's our constant interaction that we try to bring about equality. I think that faced quite a challenge to Buddhism in South Asia, and similarly, there were external forces which did not want the model of equality that existed in the Soviet Union to exist. So they were sabotage through war, through internal actions, and there was an end to Soviet Union, like how we saw the end of Buddhism in our own society. But please remember that the ideals are never defeated. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Then withering of the state, I think it's a difficult thing. At least I have not envisaged a society where the society can come to an end. However, I am a firm believer of the cooperative model, where that existed even in the Soviet Union, where the resources are to be taken over by the local people. Because what happened, if you see the example of the state having all the power or having nationalized all the assets, once the state got dismantled, the USSR, it was the bureaucratic control that transferred all the state property onto themselves. So my belief is, which existed in the Soviet model but was not implemented fully, is the ownership of the resources by the cooperatives. The local cooperatives, whoever were there, should have the means of owning that resources. That's my view on this. I might differ with the communist, dominant communist view on this, but there is scope for agreeing and disagreeing. Yeah, and Dr. Ambedkar says, how do we sustain in the Buddhist model or the Buddha's model the state after this dictatorship of the proletariat? He is actually asking the communists to adopt. He's actually being very, very fraternal. Ambedkar in the whole text is not dismissive of the communist at all. He's, in a fraternal way, he's giving the communists weapons that, see, there may be a problem with your model. So the religion could be one model where the state can be controlled, meaning the Sangha can control the state. For that matter, I'd want to say that similarly, the Politburo, with its different functions, having a little more control on the day-to-day social life of the people, I think can take the same responsibility as what Dr. Ambedkar suggested. The religion, for that matter, people may mistake religion to be very orthodox in some instances, but there are religions, godless religions, that we are talking about the Buddha's way of life and the communist way of life. If we implement the day-to-day ethics, these are godless religions that are existing, and I think we should adopt that. And Dr. Ambedkar, in the last, says that backward countries like ours need the Russian dictatorship. He says it's very important for backward countries. And I am sure most of us who know the existing inequalities existing in our country and in most of the third world countries would want a model where inequality is abolished. And for that, people's power is important. And yes, I would totally agree to Dr. Ambedkar's last expectation that liberty, equality, and fraternity, which were the slogans of the French Revolution and which galvanized or which brought about consciousness in almost all the countries that were fighting for equality or independence from colonial countries, adapted these. And I think after the initial phase of the dictatorship of the proletariat, liberty and equality would be implemented definitely. I would want to just, before closing my remarks, I'd want to say that America may be the land where liberty is in abundance, but I'm sure we are aware of Julian Assange, who exposed the cruelty of war crimes of what the USA committed on people of Iraq. He just brought it to the notice of the world. And the land of the liberty has jailed him, is not allowing him to function. And like that, there are many people who are the highest number of people in jail in any society are in the US. So let's not forget about that. So it's just the discourse of how things are presented. There's a difference. Yeah, I end my presentation, and I would thank you all for having given me this opportunity. And I would take up the question and answer session. Anything if there is disagreement or any clarification is needed. Thank you.
थैंक यू सर। और हमारी भारतीय परंपरा है वादे वादे जायते तत्वबोधः, तो वाद विवाद होने के बाद ही हमें तत्व का ज्ञान प्राप्त होता है। पक्ष विपक्ष सपक्ष सभी में हमें विचरण करना चाहिए।
I just want to add on to what Vikas just said.
Yeah, sir.
Marxist philosophy is nothing but dialectics.
Yeah.
Thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. I think we are on the same page on this. Yeah.
Yeah. तो हमने क्वेश्चन आंसर यहाँ 15 से 20 मिनट डिस्कशन इस पर रखेंगे। पहले हम सारे पैनलिस्ट को सुनना चाहेंगे, सबके अपने अपने व्यूज हैं, तो आपके जितने भी क्वेश्चन आंसर हो आप अपने उनको क्वेश्चंस को सजेशन को लिख के रखें और मैसेज बॉक्स में भी डाल सकते हैं और लास्ट में हम सारे क्वेश्चंस को पुट अप करेंगे। तो सर आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद सर, थैंक यू। नाउ आई वुड लाइक टू इनवाइट डॉक्टर Dinesh Kumar Ahirwar sir. He is the assistant professor in Department of Peace and Conflict Studies, Sikkim Central University, Sikkim.
Thank you, Vikas. First of all, of course, I would like to thank Department of Sociology, Marwari College, Department of Sanskrit, CM College, Lalit and Mithila University, Darbhanga, Bihar, and the college principal. And of course, it was great to hear my friend, UDSA friend, we have long association, Pindika Ambedkar, and there is another friend, Arvind, he will speak after me. So this is of course a very interesting and relevant topic, which of course it will be relevant in the eternity, because when we are talking about absolute moral values, let's say equality or morality, these values exist and remains relevant for forever. There is no limit. The only difference actually we make, that is the difference of means and methodology. That is what we are going to discuss today. So actually Ambedkar, the author of the book Buddha or Marx, he has said that on the page of the equality, they are talking about we have to bring about equality in the society. So how to bring equality? and to end the suffering of the common people. All this, how to end the suffering, that is the question. So what he's saying, that we have the differences of the means, not of the ends. So when ends are like, let's say, equality, liberty, and fraternity. So these things, when we are talking about to bring into the society, then how we have to bring these absolute moral principles into the reality, that is the fundamental question. And this question also remains in each and every social movement, whether it is a religious movement or social movement or political movement. How to implement your theory into practice? That is actually that is a very serious and fundamental question in all the political philosophy. How to implement your ideal principles into the society, how to bring equality into the society, how to bring a moral order in the society. So this is where we are dealing with the question of violence. Because see, I teach a paper on violence, political thought on violence, and starting from, of course, Marxist, who essentialized the violent means to bring a change into the society, and including, there are many scholars who says that violence is very, very important to bring change into the society. And what we say that, see, one of the foundational question here is that all across the world, the anti-colonial struggle or anti-imperialist struggle, all these struggle, they advocated violence to end the exploitation. But very interestingly, in Indian context, Dr. Ambedkar, who was not very fond of advocacy of the violence to bring a change into the society. Whereas if you see in African anti-colonial struggle in Africa, there are many scholars who is talking about violence, even to end the racial discrimination. Of course, other than Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, even he talked about to use violence to end the discrimination or suppression. So this is very unique in the context of India, or when we are talking about Ambedkar, how to bring change into the society. And this is a question of theory and practice. And none other than, the teacher of Dr. Ambedkar, John Dewey. We should have some discussion on John Dewey, because he was highly influenced from Professor John Dewey. He was having long association in the Columbia University. He used to be very fan of attending his lecture, all the time. He is saying that any theory is having a validity in its implementability. A theory which cannot be implemented into practice, it does not have any relevance. And what is the importance of any idea or any theory if it cannot be implemented into the practice? So the validation of any theory depends on the implementation of theory into practice. So we will talk about now, by putting the emphasis on Buddhist philosophy and ideals of the Buddhist philosophy in Indian society, in the global society, with two experiment of course, two communist experiment, China and Russia, where what were actually the problem, and of course we will discuss in today's time what is the problem in the present time as well. So see, I will say of course, we should have some discussion about this as well. See, in Indian context, I will say even this, Dalits, let's say Dalits or ex-untouchables, a society or the people, 1/5 of the population, they were not even allowed to walk on the street, take water, or share public spaces. And immediately, with the stroke of the pen, writing in the constitution, we got certain rights. Let's say banning the untouchability. This is one of the greatest achievement, you say, to the democratic struggle or non-violent movement, or credit goes to Dr. Ambedkar. A society which was treated like untouchable got some rights without violence. That we have to acknowledge, at least for whatever reason, there were many Hindu leaders in the Congress, outside the Congress, who were saying this, that why Ambedkar want to have constitutional rights and provisions to protect these people who were considered untouchable. This was revolutionary. This was revolutionary. And nobody across the world got rights so easily. There is also a question. No community across the world who got right, suddenly so radical right that, oh, you become equal citizen without using violence. So that contribution we have to accept, whether it is the nature of the Indian society, where we said that we are equal human being, and it will be written in the Indian constitution with the affirmative action, and that was accepted. That was accepted. Even when Ambedkar writing constitution, he is demanding affirmative action, there is no resistance that much. That no, you cannot give reservation for SCs and STs. Of course, there is conversation between Patel and Ambedkar, but not such a violent resistance that we will not accept the rights, equal rights for untouchables in this country. That was really amazing, or let's say the caliber of Ambedkar, who in fact had successfully fought for the rights and had the provisions in the constitution, and that is the democratic change. Of course, I will come little late to discuss the success of the Indian constitution, but this we have to accept, that how can there be a provision for the affirmative action in the Indian constitution without using violence? Even a single drop of the blood, let's say, we fought and got the rights. So this we have to acknowledge from the point of view of the whether it was the peaceful nature of Indian society. We protested and got certain rights, fighting democratically. Now I will really speaking not specifically on the Buddha or Karl Marx. I am speaking in the context of today, how we are talking about egalitarian values in the present society. So after having provisions in the constitution, or let's say in the reality, of course, there is no equality in the society. And by the fact, you all know, and we all know that. So since the metaphysical idea, in fact, let's say equality in the eyes of God, or equality in the eyes of law, will become the same without having no meaning if there is massive scale of inequality emerging in Indian society, which we see today itself. So of course we have at least constitutional right, but after 60 or 70 years, these constitutional rights now becoming like the rights, like let's say people are equal in the eyes of the God, or people are equal in the eyes of the law or constitution, but these rights are becoming meaningless in the present context. in the present context. So how to forget about equality, liberty, and fraternity and dignity? Even you do not have now, your rights are being shrunken by the the private the expenditure of the private property, expansion of the private property, where you have in fact no rights if there is equality in the society. So in this context, of course, where Ambedkar is discussing that the difference between Marx and Buddha is not of the objective, but of the means. And means has to be set actually in the context. So values remains values in the eternity. Values may be absolute. See, that is the problem when, of course, my friend Pindiga Ambedkar is speaking that propagating violence or even propagating non-violence. See, means are supposed to be fixed in the context, not the morality. We cannot fix the morality into the context. Morality is universal. Morality is equal to all. Of course, it is absolute moral values. But when we talk about context, means, then fixation of means also put you into the framework of the orthodoxy, where you stick that, no, I believe in this particular means and I will not use different kind of means. And that is what even Ambedkar chose his means to fight injustice in India very pragmatically. I will say even Ambedkar chose his means of fighting for social justice in Indian context was his pragmatist idea. That was the influence of Professor John Dewey. So in that context, of course, that is very, very important, which I will also say that Ambedkar used his means in the context. And when you use particular strategy, that is not the absolute strategy. You change your strategy but absolute moral value, let's say equality, liberty, or fraternity, will remain equality, liberty, and fraternity in each and every context. But means cannot be static. It has to be changed according to the context. That is what see. So of course, when we are talking about actually the idealism or the metaphysical values of absolute moral values, let's say the idealism or the moral principles, and Marxist principle of materialism, that is really we have to put into the context where Ambedkar was talking about. See, here I will it's going in my mind when Karl Marx is in fact reading about religion. I will speak for 2 minutes here. It's very, very important, and it's my observation that Karl Marx's primary reading on religion is his study of Feuerbach. And Feuerbach is an anthropologist of the Germany, and he is in fact, of course, criticizing Christianity. He is in fact criticizing Christianity and talking about the spiritual and metaphysical aspect, equality, where people believe in the all are equal, and also he's saying that he is not interested to talk about metaphysical equality. He is more interested about talking about materialistic equality. We should have equality that is more materialistic in nature. the materialistic gains. But very philosophically here, I will say, now you see in the society, capitalism is spreading materialistic inequality because they also going in that direction. When a society is highly religious, they believe in metaphysical equality, metaphysical salvation. But now, in the present context, whole society is looking for a kind of satisfaction or liberation, running behind the materialistic gains. Materialistic gains. All of us, we are looking for wealth or making money, and all these individuals, even capitalism is highly driven from, or highly influenced from, the idea of the materialism, and that is a materialistic gain, and gaining wealth and making private property and accumulating wealth. See, when society is highly influenced from the religious ideas or egalitarian values or moral values, they work for that. So at least there would not have been the materialistic inequality in the society if even capitalists, they do not believe in materialistic inequality or gains. That is what I will speak here. And then, of course, Ambedkar and, of course, Buddha, or even Marx, three of them, they are rationalists and also believe in universalism, universal values. They are not talking about sectarian values or values in the particular context. There are three of them. They are talking about rationalism and, of course, universalism. And see, this is where we have to see that Marxist and Ambedkarite or Buddhist are having the differences in the means and methodology, not in terms of the ends. That is what even Ambedkar also highlighted. See, so when we are talking about let me say, when we are talking about even violence or advocacy of violence, violence is not end in itself for even Marxist as well. Violence is not end in itself even for Marxist itself. It's only a means. And democratic means are also not absolute end in itself. Like for Gandhi, yes, means are for him, for Gandhi, means are absolute means for him. He said that means are end and absolute end as well as ends for himself. So he said that he believed in absolute non-violence. Like Jain also believe in that. Whereas even Buddha approved violence in the self-defense, right? Violence in the self-defense. See, I will speak a little bit on structural violence, then I will stop here. See, there are two types of violence which we see in the society. First is direct visual violence, which we can see. Direct violence, we see that, oh, this is the violence. Let's say the ethnic violence is the form of direct violence. Or let's say the workers are protesting, police is doing, suppressing this is a direct visual form of the violence. Now, the time has come where there is no direct violence. There is a structural, indirect, invisible form of the violence which you cannot see from your naked eye. I will give you the example of the violence which is very pervasive now. I come from Bundelkhand, Madhya Pradesh, and there is drought. So people are migrating and starving. Why? Because of the climate change. So who did the climate change? Of course, capitalists did the climate change. They are responsible. your development, progress. Delhi's development or Mumbai's development is responsible for drought in Bundelkhand. So if people in Bundelkhand is starving, that is actually the structural violence. Africa is also facing drought. That is the structural violence which is resulted from the development which happened in Europe or in America or let's say in Asia, China and all. So even structural violence, coronavirus is structural violence where many people died. If people died from the curable diseases, that is structural violence. Poverty is the structural violence. So violence is happening. Direct violence in the liberal society is now illegal. Let's say nobody can hit you. Violence, direct violence is illegal, but structural violence is very much legal in the present liberal democratic, or let's say in the present societies across the world. If Americans working for 18 hours, that is the direct violence. We have to end the private property. Japan is working for 18 hours. That is the structural violence. Or Indians, if Indians are poor, that is also the structural violence. So violence is happening in some way or other way. But how we can contain this, the structural violence, that remains a fundamental question. Whether you discuss in Marxist philosophy or Buddhist philosophy, or even in the discourse of Ambedkarism, we have to stop violence. Now, to the final point, I will come, which is now I'm not a great fan of modernity or science and technology. In fact, the power equation has completely shifted or completely changed. And if with the introduction of artificial intelligence and computer science and technology, the poor marginals or 99% of people are highly they are marginalized, deprived, or let's say weak in comparison to ruling class or the state. So even today, in the time, let's say even today, if even working class or common people try to choose option as violence for change, it is not possible. So much science and technological advancement had happened in the present time, which will in fact can control anything in the present time. So even violence, we forget about usage of the violence. We are incapable of using violence. Incapable. You cannot use violence against state now, or nobody can use violence. That is what the question is now. So how to have a change democratically or bringing change into the society? That is a fundamental question. And in terms of universalism and rationality, let's say I will say even Gautam Buddha or for Kant, he is saying that something which cannot be universalized, that cannot be the moral. Something which cannot be universalized, that cannot become moral. So if something that cannot become moral, but in the present context, the modernity project or the project of the Enlightenment philosophy, which was to promote rationality and universal values, or the fair system, in fact, these objectives remains unfulfilled, and it seems that they are not going to be fulfilled very soon. So this I actually wanted to put these thought in present context, not talking about in the past or 100-year back. If we, let's say, if we put these thought into the present context, can we really bring equality into the society? or equality, liberty, fraternity in the present context, where we are facing extreme level of deprivation, extreme level of, in the society. So these are the issues which we have to see and look into the present context. That is what. But I will also make two point, very small point. I will tell you two experiment, or very specifically Chinese experiment. See, Mao used violence and he established communism, a society where there is no private property, nothing, everybody is getting food, there is a complete equality. And these communes, he established 20,000 communes in China, and these communes were 5,000 people to 20,000 people. Communes, complete commune system. And there was a law that farmers has to eat 3 times. Okay, there was a law in these communes that you have to eat 3 times, in the morning, afternoon, and the evening. You cannot sleep empty stomach. That was a rule. Mao instructed the authorities that nobody should sleep empty stomach. And within 2 years, these communes collapsed. And there was a complete disaster and famine, and millions of the people died. So I don't know actually what people want. There was a complete equality, idea of the complete equality, and he was implementing. But these communes collapsed, and very drastically they collapsed. It was a complete disaster. And then, of course, Mao thought that it was a culture which was responsible for, destroying these communes. So he went for doing cultural revolution, and again he was unsuccessful. So see, here we have to see how human nature is here, and we have to discipline through morality and not through the control. And that is what the even Ambedkar talking about, that the means which are enforced, or violent means which are enforcing particular system, will not sustain for long. And that is the simple reason where even communes failed. So I don't know what people want. In fact, in the society, they want poverty or inequality, or they want freedom, not equality. That is what. So I will end here. I will stop here. And of course, I would like to thank all of you who I know paid attention and listened me patiently. And thank you, Ambedkar. And I will listen, I think, now Arvind. Okay, thank you.
थैंक यू सर। बेहतरीन ढंग से आपने बहुत सारी चीज़ों को एक सैद्धांतिक विमर्श के साथ में समझाया। और बाकी हम तो इतना जानते हैं वायलेंस के बारे में, इतने विवेक तो नहीं पता, पर भगवान बुद्ध की वाणी पता है कि ना ही वैरेन वैरानी समन्ति कुदाचनंग वैरेन सम्मन्ति एस धम्मो सनातनो, कि वैर से वैर को कभी खत्म नहीं किया जा सकता है, प्रेम से ही वैर को खत्म किया जा सकता है। और अब हम हमारे जो चौथे स्पीकर हैं, the fourth panelist is Mr. Arvind Kumar, and he is pursuing his PhD from Royal Holloway, University of London, UK. He is a famous columnist in the print and other media. So the dais is yours, Mr. Arvind Kumar.
Thank you, Dr. Vikas Singh, for inviting me. And thank you, Department of Sociology, Marwari College, and Department of Sanskrit, CM College of Lalit, Narayan, Mithila University for inviting me. And thank you, Principal and other distinguished panels for your auspicious presence. And also Dinesh and Pindiga Ambedkar, 2 of them who have been my senior in JNU, and both of them have been mentor also. So they spoke before me, so in that way they have somehow made my job very much easier. So I will because I guess that audience would be audience is from Hindi heartland. So I would like to miss. I will talk in English, but sometimes I will also like to miss talk in Hindi as well. So mix of the audience I will speak. So yeah. So the text which we were asked to speak on Buddha or Karl Marx, it is in volume third of Baba Sahib Ambedkar's writing and speeches. I have shared in chat box, and it is, I think, last chapter, 18th chapter, and it is supposed to be from Ambedkar's speech, which he has delivered in fourth World Buddhist Conference, which was or that kind of some program which was organized in Kathmandu on 20th November 1956. And Ambedkar was asked to deliver a lecture, and lecture was on Buddhism and communism. So he delivered lecture, and that lecture was later somehow it was improvised, and but it could not get published. Later, when after his Mahapanirvan, this text was discovered and it was published. There are some controversies about this text, which you can find one book in where Professor Gopal Guru has discussed that controversy, and book's name is Political Philosophy of Gramsci and Ambedkar. It is edited by Kojimo Jene, and Guru has contributed a chapter in that book. Its name is I think, yeah, its name is Limit of Organic Intellectuals, that kind of thing, Gramscian reading of B.R. Ambedkar. So Guru talks about when original text was discovered, there was multiple version, or even you can say at that time people used to write they used to write handwriting. So Ambedkar he says that Guru argues, I do not know whether it is true or not, but he says that title was sometimes given Buddha and Karl Marx, sometimes it was written as Buddha or Karl Marx. So finally, editors decided that okay, go with the title Buddha or Karl Marx. So this is the context in which little bit more information which I wanted to provide. And coming on this text means after a long time, in fact, first time when I read this text, it was on instruction of Indiga Ambedkar himself in 2012. He asked me to read Ambedkar's writing, and I took a book which was edited by Valerian Rodriguez, and I took that book from Dinesh itself. So after that long period, I think after 10 years, is once again when Vikas asked me to speak on this text, once again I had to read. These days I work on elections, so I do not read frequently historical texts. But I read once again, and thank you Vikas for forcing me to go once again to go on that text. So when we look, reading of any text requires understanding the context in which those texts are written. So if we see that period, of course, that period was a time when after Great Depression, which happened in 1927, open market economies got completely collapsed, whereas Soviet model communist state, Soviet Union was progressing quite a lot, and therefore there were a lot of enthusiasm for communist model and communist means, and that is why this text that is why even in India also people were so much impressed with communist model, and countries which were where Buddhism was there, they were also impressed. Probably this was the one of the reason why Ambedkar was asked to deliver that his speech on Buddhism and communism. While even when you read Ambedkar text, one another text, state and minority, what are their rights? In that text also he takes one of the important idea from Soviet communism, and that is on agriculture, cooperative farming. He proposes cooperative farming. So one can clearly see on economic front, he was quite a lot impressed with some of the ideas or some of the practices which were in Buddhism, in communism. But along with that, there was since Ambedkar was a global scholar and he was trained in Columbia and London School of Economics, so he also was aware about global debates, larger critiques which were offered on different means and ends. So all those sort of issues he had to deal with. So two things there was almost across the ideological domain and across the terrain, there was agreement that this world needs to be changed, and that world need to be changed in terms of removing imperialism and colonialism, elimination of poverty and extreme form of inequality. These set of things were basically on the table. But issue was how to bring those changes. And one model, so how to bring the changes means establishing new set of world order. And one thing was that what are the means which should be adopted for bringing change. And one mean which was already previously, which was practiced, which was what I call tried and tested formula. So tried and tested formula was revolution, but for which Marx has extensively argued for revolution, proletariat revolution. But as you are aware, that revolution, it was not Marx who were first time arguing for revolution. Revolution has already previously happened in France and America. And in larger philosophical debate, there was some critique of revolution which has happened in France and America. And one important thinker who had taken lead in basically criticizing the idea of revolution was Edmund Burke, conservative philosopher Edmund Burke, who has been extensively quoted by Ambedkar after 1945. The text which he has written after 1945, sometimes he borrows argument from Edmund Burke and places for criticizing different things. So another thing which you can go through Ambedkar's writing on Gandhi, Ranade and Jinnah. In that text also Ambedkar took up Edmund Burke's idea and criticizes Gandhi and Jinnah for that. And in this text also which is Buddha or Karl Marx, here he also brings Edmund Burke. When you will read the text, some of you might have read the text, you will come across that two thinkers whom he had extensively quoted. One is, of course, John Dewey, about whom Dinesh has mentioned, who was his teacher. But another important thinker whom he cites is Edmund Burke. And Burke has written a book called Reflections on French Revolution, in which he argues, in that period when Burke was arguing or writing, in that period there was debate whether people want social change or people themselves does not want social change. So idea was that whether people wants liberty, people wants freedom, or people do not want freedom. And this debate has arisen in that period of time. One reason was because of Greek idea that certain people are born with the commanding virtue and certain people are born with obeying virtue. So those who are born with what is called slaves are born with obeying virtue. They do not want to be free. They want to be subjugated. And this idea has led to the debate whether people want freedom or they do not want freedom. And if they want they do not want, why they do not want. So another political philosopher, Rousseau, has argued that people should be forced to be free. Sometimes you might come across those ideas. And in that line, Edmund Burke, while criticizing revolution, you would have come across that debate after French Revolution, when it was decided that after 4 years of French Revolution, they saw emergence of Napoleon Bonaparte. So once again, authoritarianism was established, although they have revolted against the king on the name of equality, liberty, fraternity. But they quickly fell in that trap once again. And Edmund Burke argued that people do not want revolution, or people do not want change. One reason is that because of uncertainty. So they are unaware that if revolution will happen, the next world order which is going to be established, how that world would look like, what would be my situation. So even a poor person can think कि ठीक है, अगर आप उसको किसी गरीब आदमी को कहिए ठीक है हम क्रांति कर देंगे, एक दूसरी दुनिया में आपको लेके चले जाएंगे, तो उसको इसी बात की चिंता रहेगी कि जो है हमारे पास 10 बकरी है, वो नई दुनिया में हमारे पास 10 बकरी होगी या नहीं होगी। हो सकता है वो 10 बकरी में 5 बकरी छीन ली जाए। मीन्स व्हेन यू आर्ग्यू फॉर इक्वलिटी, सो पर्सन कैन थिंक इन दिस वे कि जो है हो सकता है कि मेरी 10 बकरी में से 5 ही बकरी रह जाए नई दुनिया में। सो दिस सॉर्ट ऑफ पेटी थिंग्स लीड्स टू दी uncertainty in the mind of people, and that prevents revolution, and as well as also revolution. Yeah. So Ambedkar means he takes those ideas, and also Burke has also argued that what are the forces after revolution, what are the forces which will be holding people together. And Ambedkar takes those ideas and he places those critiques against Marxist idea of revolution, despite agreeing that certain things which Marxism has brought. And those were, of course, when you are in the period where you are seeing the changes which Marxism has brought in the world, one can't deny on those changes. So Ambedkar takes those two things. So I argued that one thing was basically pre-revolution. What are the means which should be used for bringing revolution? And he argued that he analyzes Marx advocacy of non-violence, violence, and again analyzes the idea of violence and non-violence. He says that okay, violence can't be end in itself; it can't be absolute in terms. Dinesh said that in his presentation that Ambedkar has argued against violence, but in my reading, at least two texts. One, this text itself, he denies that violence, non-violence as an absolute idea. And I quote in one phrase where he says, Buddha's ahimsa was not an absolute as the ahimsa preached by Mahavir, the founder of Jainism. So he means from Buddha's idea of ahimsa, he means that violence can be used in certain context. This is what Ambedkar said in this text. But also, along with that, in volume 17, part 3, there he has also used, Ambedkar has talked about the idea of violence and non-violence, and he says that I advocate the idea of non-violence, which was told by Tukaram. So Tukaram's idea was that for establishing a non-violent society, you have to eliminate the sources of violence in the society. So if one leaves the sources of violence in the society, one can't imagine any society which would be a non-violent society. So Ambedkar said that means our non-violence is also means that eliminating the sources which gives genesis to the violence. So you can say that without violence, how one can imagine that those things can be established. Yeah. So this is one thing, means which is means violence in bringing revolution. So Ambedkar somehow a little bit agrees that violence can't be used as a permanent means, but impermanent means. I see means in different reading he talks about that thing. Next thing which he discusses about, that is about withering away of state, and which is nothing but how world will look like after the revolution. So communist has talked, Marx has talked about that, okay, state will wither away after a certain point of time. But once again, he brings those ideas. If state will wither away, if authority will wither away, what would be the thing? What would be the force which would be holding together? So withering away of state would means resulting into anarchy, and again anarchy has its own repercussion on the people's life. It leads to the destruction of protection, means insecurity of life, and all those sort of things. Idea of insecurity, which are uncertainty along with insecurity comes if there is no authority in post-revolutionary order. And here Ambedkar says that actually Buddhism can pave a way for holding society together in post revolutionary world order. And he said that here he criticizes Marx and said that Marx has not taken Buddhism very seriously. Although Marx has severely criticized, while criticizing religion, he says that Marx has not taken Buddhism seriously. And right before me, Spindika Ambedkar and Dinesh both talked about thesis of Feuerbach. Means Marx idea, critique of religion was based on that, and thesis of Feuerbach was largely critique of Christianity. Christianity preaches, means for resolving the world problem, it preaches that otherworldliness, it preaches the idea of God and otherworldliness. So Christianity actually does not provide any solution for present misery and poverty. It just says that, okay, you should live the life which you have got in this world, and you will get better life if you follow certain sermons and other things. You will get better life when you will die, means in other world, in God's world, you will get those set of life. But Buddhism doesn't talk about all those things. Means in Buddhism, of course, there is no God, and also there is no idea of otherworldliness. So if someone dies these days, I come across social media, people call ki ये व्यक्ति अनंत काल की यात्रा पर निकल पड़े. So that anant kal never comes in one's life. This sort of ideas basically comes. What is called impermanence. So there is nothing called where a final destiny one could have. Those sort of values, I am not very much expert of Buddhist philosophy, and Vikas and others can tell about that. Yeah. So with this, I would, So before my presentation, one thing which last thing which I would like to point out, that Ambedkar basically has brought up the idea of spirituality. He tries to bring up the idea of spirituality in the domain of discussion of equality, liberty, fraternity, which is one of the things I found that even not only Ambedkar, but also Tagore and other philosophers have also given taken spirituality and as an epistemological category to criticize Western ideas and offer a solution to the problems or questions which were raised by Western scholar. Thank you everyone for giving me opportunity and listening patiently. I would like to welcome questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind ji. और आप चारों ही पैनलिस्ट के लिए बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। और अभी मैं आमंत्रित करता हूं, जिस किसी को भी प्रश्न करने हैं हमारे चारों वक्ताओं से आप लोग प्रश्न कर सकते हैं, जो भी आपके प्रश्न हो रख सकते हैं। किसी की कोई क्वेरी हो या कोई सजेशन हो तो वो अपनी बात यहाँ रख सकता है, अदरवाइज हम यहाँ वाइंड अप करेंगे, फिर प्रोग्राम को वाइंड अप करने की ओर आगे बढ़ रहे हैं।
विकास आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है, आप अनम्यूट कर लीजिए।
मेरे को नहीं लग रहा कि कोई यहाँ पर, क्योंकि विषय बड़ा गंभीर विषय है और उस तरह के लोग यहाँ सतही, ज्यादातर लोग सतही ज्ञान को पढ़ने वाले हैं, गंभीर विषयों को पढ़ने वाले बहुत ही बिरले लोग होते हैं, तो उस तरह के तह तक पहुंच पाना बड़ा ही कम, मतलब उस तरह के लोग मिलते हैं। पर मैं एक क्वेश्चन यहाँ रखना चाहता हूँ, और कि भगवान बुद्ध और कार्ल मार्क्स दोनों के ही साध्य और साधन के जो अंतर है, और स्पेशली मैं साधनों की बात करूं कि एक तरफ अहिंसा को हम टूल बना के उस तरह का समाज निर्माण कर सकते हैं जहां समानता, स्वतंत्रता और बंधुत्व की भावना रहती है, और कार्ल मार्क्स उसके एकदम विपरीत होके, एकदम विपरीत विचारधारा से जाते हैं। हालांकि अंबेडकर सर ने उस पर मतलब उसको स्पर्श किया कि डेमोक्रेटिक वे में इंडियन कम्युनिस्ट ने इलेक्शन लड़ने के माध्यम से अपनी सरकारें भी बनाई थी उन्होंने। तो ये जो साध्य वाली बात है कि साधन की पवित्रता के साथ में साध्य की पवित्रता का जो कॉन्सेप्ट आता है, उसको सर कैसे देखते हैं? ये स्पेशली पिंडिगा अंबेडकर सर से मेरा प्रश्न है।
I also request you to probably give a gist of it in English so that I can.
Sir, I am just requesting about the means, the difference between the means which is used by Karl Marx and Buddha.
See, actually, Dinesh in his presentation made the context that is important. So even if you read the Communist Manifesto, there Marx and Engels talk about that violence need not be a necessary force everywhere. So in a different society where there is no need for violence, it is foolish on part of the praxis or part of your strategy, the words that Dinesh used. It would be foolish on any part to just get into violence as a mode to bring about social change. So the context is very important. So I think Marx is wrongly understood mostly because if you see, revolutions took up places, happened in places mostly in agrarian societies where the inequalities have been too stark, too wide. So suppose if we imagine a revolution, say in the United States of America, I think it's the people's way forward is to convince them I mean, an educated society, or for that matter, any democratic, if already there is democracy that is established, you would want to use that means available to attain power there. So मेरा कहने का है कि strategy और context बहुत important होती है हर चीज में, even in Marxist thought. So Marx को absolute violence ही promote किया, वो सच नहीं है. हम मैनिफेस्टो पढ़े तो उसमें साफ तौर लिखा है कि democratic societies, wherever there is less inequality, there you don't have to, I mean, adapt to violence. Yeah, so it's just a matter of strategy and context. Yeah, I just want to add on to one thing, that we should not forget that Dr. Ambedkar, Dinesh said, Dr. Ambedkar used the stroke of a pen to bring about a non-violent revolution in the country. That is very well. Because of the freedom struggle, Dr. Ambedkar got an opportunity to be the change that was necessary for our Indian subcontinent. In a space like now, I think it's very difficult. So, yeah, that's all.
Thank you, sir.
Because हेलो
सर, मेरा एक क्वेश्चन था अरविंद सर से कि
जी जी बोलिए।
एक आदर्श समाज के लिए बाबा साहेब, बुद्ध और मार्क्स, इन तीनों को किस प्रकार से आप रैंकिंग कीजिएगा अपने विचार से?
ये तो मतलब एक बहुत सा ही डिफिकल्ट सवाल है कि जो है किस हिसाब से रैंकिंग किया जाए। कारण ये है कि हाँ, मतलब बट आदर्श समाज की जो हम परिकल्पना करते हैं, परिकल्पना जो है वो सर्टेन आइडियाज के बेसिस पर होती है, और वो परिकल्पना जो है इक्वलिटी, लिबर्टी, फ्रेटर्निटी का जो आइडिया है, मैं उसके साथ खड़ा होता हूँ कि जो है वो आइडिया इम्पोर्टेंट आइडिया है। और उसमें कुछ आइडिया जो है बुद्धिज्म से आता है, कुछ आइडिया फ्रेंच रिवॉल्यूशन से आता है, कुछ आइडिया कार्ल मार्क्स से आता है। सो मैं जो है वो एक थोड़ा सा थिंकर्स को रैंकिंग करना एक डिफिकल्ट टास्क है, बट इन इंडियन कॉन्टेक्स्ट में मैं जो है अगर मुझे रैंकिंग करना ही हो तो मैं अंबेडकर को फर्स्ट रखूंगा, उसके बाद जो है कार्ल मार्क्स को रखूंगा और बुद्धिज्म को रखूंगा, बट अंबेडकर मेरे लिए फर्स्ट थिंकर है। उसके सर्टेन रीजंस हैं, और वो रीजंस मतलब कोई ये कह सकता है कि मैं बुद्धा को पहले क्यों नहीं रख रहा हूँ, लेकिन तो वो जो फिलॉसफी है, जो टीचिंग्स है बुद्धा की, उसको अगर आप देखेंगे तो उसके बाद एक दुनिया है जहां पर जो है तमाम तरीके की सफरिंग और ढेर सारी चीजें आती हैं लोगों की जिंदगी में, और उसको लेकर जो टीचिंग्स हैं उनको लेकर तमाम तरीके के जो है आर्गुमेंट्स, काउंटर आर्गुमेंट्स जगह जगह री इमर्ज होके आते हैं। तो इस वजह से जो है चूंकि वो एक ट्रायल एंड टेस्टेड आइडिया है जो प्रीवियसली रहा है, और उसके रिपरकशंस जो उसका अच्छाई हो सकती है, बुराई हो सकती है, वो हमने ऑलरेडी 2400 साल में पिछले देख रखा है। So that's why I will go with the Ambedkar's idea, and that I will place as a first thinker for yes.
Thank you, sir.
See, adding on to what Arvind said, I think Ambedkar is a product of a chain of revolutionaries. So the knowledge that everybody contributed, Dr. Ambedkar is a product of all the chain. So you can't separate anybody. I mean, you can't separate Ambedkar from all the ideas that were passed on by the society to him. So he is a chain of thought for human liberation. Yeah, that's all.
One another thing which I would like to add on is I am a student of political science, so in my discipline it is divided on two lines. One is called behavioral science, and another is called normative sciences. And mostly what we are talking about is normative sciences. Earlier, in my previous university in JNU, I was trained in normative sciences, but now the institution where I am based is basically, it teaches behavioral sciences. So one idea which recently strike in my mind while reading means in behavioral sciences, and that is about age factor. And it talks about, there are plenty of research. One textbook I would suggest to read. It is an Oxford handbook on political philosophy, Oxford handbook on political behavior. It talks about, there is chapter on religion, and that chapter, two ideas have been striken in my mind. One is that religion teaches immaterialism in the society, and second thing which strikes in my mind is about the age. So it talks about people, as people get older, they start following religion. People become more religious when they become older. And from that line, I also think leaders, means when I place leaders, while analyzing them, their thoughts, it immediately comes in my mind, okay, how much that person is influenced by the power or importance of religion, or how much that person is influenced by his or her own age factor itself. Because person who become older, they fall in trap of religion, they become more religious, more spiritual. Yeah. So while
may I come in little bit? Can I give some input?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So here Arvind had I wanted to hint upon on this question on materialism and metaphysical equality here, where he's hinting towards the age, that as you get older, you are more attracted towards religion and religious philosophy. Actually, see, anything what we think in terms of egalitarianism, or let's say equality, idea of equality is a metaphysical idea. Idea of equality, you cannot keep equality in pocket, you cannot keep equality on your table, but you have to assume that there could be a society based on the idea of equality. So as you move towards rationality, even I used to think that rationalists will reject the existence of God, but that was my incorrect understanding about philosophy. In fact, rationalists had to accept and have to accept the existence of the God and morality, and not the materialist. So what happens actually, over the period of time, you use your reason and moves towards metaphysical happiness. As you becomes, even Dr. Ambedkar converted to Buddhism in his last phase, that is his last attempt, because in the final stage you have to move towards the absolute moral end if you are driven by the kind of egalitarian ideas. So here, that is what I said on when I was talking about Feuerbach and Marx. Marx is talking about, of course, empirical manifestation of the material condition, but his ideas are still driven from the metaphysical idea of equality. And that is what we always see things in the binary, that, oh, this is materialism, this is idealism. In fact, rationalist, if you are a rationalist, or anybody who is a rationalist, has to accept values or has to accept some certain egalitarian ideas. If somebody who will reject egalitarian ideas and absolute moral values, who is a materialist and empiricist? And that is what the difference I still looking into in this paradox, whether there could be a real demarcation between this rationalist and materialist. So even I have read on Kant and Hegel. Finally, Kant accepted that there is God. Hegel also accepted there is God. Even, let's say, the communism, the final stage of the communism, the society, whole communist idea or the communist society, that is absolute ideal society, which is a kind of a utopia. That is the product of Marx rationality. There was no communist society ever existed in the world, never existed. But we think that there will be an ideal society. So we have to believe in certain ideals. So when we are reducing it to particular age groups, actually, see, youths are driven by too much materialistic thought and anarchist freedom. So they reject the idea of the rationality. They want freedom and reject the idea of the rationality. And all the people, they gets older and older, they becomes more, let's say, having some kind of moral values. This is wrong, this is right. So in this context, even any moral idea, there cannot be any morality without existence of certain particular absolute moral values, and that moral values has to be driven from a one particular point, that is the central point, and you have to accept it. So I will say a kind of rejection of the God was in fact a conspiracy of the capitalism to reject any ideal form of the society, to promote capitalism and the materialism. That is what I have some kind of understanding about Kant idea of the God and Hegel's idea of the God. And Marx of course read Hegel's idea, materialism, and he moved toward pure materialistic thought. Pure materialistic thought. So capitalist society is completely materialistic society. They do not believe in idealism. They believe in complete accumulation of wealth. That is what. So you can see the vulgar manifestation of the materialism. That is the capitalism. Vulgar manifestation of the materialism is the capitalism. And if you're talking about egalitarian ideas, you still have certain moral abstract idea, and that is your reason and rationality. I think my friend want to say something.
Yeah, see, Dr. Vikas, is it okay if I say a few words? Because I think the discussion is going in a very different direction from what we started off.
Okay.
See, having, being a student of sociology and having studied, how the institutions in society function, what Arvind pointed out about as we age, we become religious and all, that has to do with the law of nature. Religion or whatever is because we become vulnerable as we age. In a society where we are in nuclear families, we are no more with our children. So obviously we seek solace for the care that we need. And that's a reason probably, this is being a sociologist, I'm trying to reason out that people become more religious. I think it's to do with the disintegration of a joint family, and care is less in nuclear families. I think that may be a reason. And to Arvind, to Dinesh, I think you have to, see, it's a very wrong on my part to say, but I think we all have to reread Buddha and his Dhamma to go back and see that Dr. Ambedkar professed a godless religion. Let's not forget that. For society to be too organized on basis on normative values, that need not be a metaphysical thing, right? It's a day-to-day thing. If you are aware of inequality or injustice, that thought automatically comes to you. These are very much material values that come about through your day-to-day affairs. So I think we should go back and read Buddha and his Dhamma, where Dr. Ambedkar clearly says, I mean, let's take this discussion elsewhere, but let's end it by saying godless religion is what is the way forward.
See, I will add something. See,
yes,
if you read, the core Buddhist idea is that they want to drive. Even Ambedkar's idea is also this, that he's talking about Buddhism has driven morality out of the fear of the God. Okay, so Buddhism is not driving morality to rule the society from the fear of the God, whereas the rest of the society, means rest of the religions, let's say Hinduism or Christianity or Islam, all the religions has driven idea of the morality from the fear of God. This means that if you violate something, you will be punished in the hell. That is the fear. So you have to be a righteous man to not to go to hell, but you have to go to heaven. So you have to be, doing certain fundamental moral duties, and you will go to heaven. That is the fear of the God. So you are moral. Where Buddhism is saying that we believe in morality, so we are believing in morality, so we act morally, not out of the fear of the God. That is absolutely, there is no problem in this conception. But actually, I am thinking on this. I'm still thinking on this because I teach a paper on religion. And on religion, I'm reading the debate. In fact, a rationalist or a mathematician, let's say the mathematical logic and reasoning, we will say mathematics. Mathematical logics and reasoning, following that you have to believe at one point of time in the God. And that is where actually when I entering into the philosophy of the metaphysics, I'm in the position now where I reached that I have to accept a God to stop somewhere. Actually, this world is endless. There is infinity. So if you accept there is infinity, why reason you have to stop at one point and say that let's go for equality? And it is endless. And that is where I said that rejection of the God actually has led to the massive scale of inequality in the materialistic world. That is what my point. I'm not saying that I have reached to the conclusion, but here I'm still looking into the Kantian moral values and Hegel dialectical idealism, where the metaphysical God, existence of metaphysical God, they accepted. And I also reached there. Being rationalist, I accepted the idea of the God, not the materialistic and manifestation of the God. I do not believe in Aarti, Puja, or doing any materialistic, empirical manifestation of God. I do not believe. But at the point of time, being rationalist, I have to accept existence of the God. That is what I was saying. And of course, Buddhism driving morality not from the fear of God. I know that. And that is what Ambedkar talking about, that you need not to drive morality from the fear of the God. Somebody has to be moral because he believes in morality, and that is why the morality will be more sustaining. And believing voluntarily into the morality, that will be more sustaining, and you will be able to create a beautiful society. Okay, so I think he will.
So thank you, sir. And in the last, now I would like to invite Venerable Dr. Farafla Sorawat Afipanyo for the concluding remark and Dhammapalan Gatha. Venerable. Thank you to everyone. Venerable Dhammapalan Gatha, please end this session with Dhammapalan Gatha. बंद करो, लाल बटन पर क्लिक करो. Yeah, Venerable, on 11th of May, the international webinar on the universal teachings of the Buddha.
Okay, nice to see you, Arvind. Thank you, sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद. Thanks, sir. Knowledgeable speech. You're very knowledgeable. Thanks a lot, all of you.
Thank you, sir.